Thank you for joining Think, Build, Launch podcast. This program is an extension of Marl Startup Studio. Marl Startup Studio was started to support students and first-time founders of all ages while they are at the idea stage of their startup. We believe there are so many innovative ideas in our community that get missed simply because people do not have the structure they need to take their idea into an actionable plan, and that is exactly what we do. Today, I would like to welcome our guest, Hélène Thibieroz, founder of We Grow Green Tech. Hélène is an accomplished serial entrepreneur in residence and technologist focusing on green and climate change technology. She thrives on uncovering and scaling solutions to complex climate change problems by taking the leverage of her technology, business, and innovation and scale experience. And we're so delighted to have you here as a guest today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be there.
Marl Startup Studio is an ideation studio. We're very pre-stage. And so I was wondering, from your vast experience, what are some important aspects for designing for scale that might help our platform?
Well, the first one is always cost. So my experience working with a lot of very exciting innovation, right? You find this amazing technology, very passionate founders, and then you start looking into what will it take to scale. And we have entered an era with corporations of very limited bandwidth for innovation, right? If they're going to be adopting a technology, they need to see a return in terms of cost structure. I'm going to give you an example. I worked with a very interesting technology inspired from biomimicry. It was a different structure for composite material. So by using this technology, you can actually use less, like by 20 to 50% less material. Even if there was definitively a cost improvement for a large corporation, it's very hard to migrate this technology to scale it because they're looking into even more cost benefit. So when you have, especially in the context of green technology, right, when you're going with existing infrastructure or pushing new innovation, the concept of cost is a key one in scalability. So if you have something that provide maybe 5 to 10% cost improvement, the chance of you scaling it are close to none.
Wow. Okay. What else?
In terms of scalability, an interesting example, that's a company I'm working with right now. It's a breakthrough technology. The technology is the company is called Reliant. We actually been moving from a concept to a prototype. So if you look at material, right now, it's really interesting in today's world is we keep innovating, we keep pushing things, but we've depleted most of the resources of our planet, right? A lot of material have been mined. We keep consuming at a pace that is non-sustainable, but we're going to have a problem with material. So there's two options, right? And you see a lot of innovation going to space, going at asteroids, material there, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Or you have to look for material that are still available. If you look, for example, at renewable energy, such as solar energy, wind energy, electrification, there is a strong reliance in the electronics used for this technology of some material that are going to be within just short to midterm not available. So that just starting to think in terms of scalability is a major problem. Like this technology is interesting because we're using a material that's widely available with no geopolitical dependence. And using this technology, you can actually remove CO2 and air pollution from existing systems. So depending on the type of technology you're looking at, as most technology to resolve a current climate problem are going to be relying on material, it's a big challenge that you're going to have to face when you're in early stage, right? Like, are the resource you are using going to be scalable? And it's starting to be more and more for a founder that find interesting technology. That's going to be the key, looking at material in the availability standpoint.
Wow. So what I'm hearing, and I hope I get this correct, is that your invitation is for people to reverse engineer their supply chain as they're designing their scale model.
That's exactly that. Yeah, because it's interesting. I work with large technology corporation for many years. And when we developed electronic components, it was always for the performance, right? For the characteristics of the material. It was never with the thinking, is it something that's sustainable? Material going to be available for many years. When you look at electric cars, lithium, did we think once, is this material going to be able to be scalable at the level that we need? Because it's the same thing for cobalt. Is the material going to be available? Is it geopolitically available? None of this thinking was happening. So I think we're entering a great decade where people are starting to realize, well, we can't do everything we want anymore because we used a lot of the resources. So what do we do moving forward? So the concept of circularity is going to be key into the innovation.
So what I'm hearing that's kind of breakthrough, everyone, is that what Hélène has offered us is that no matter what business you're in, you have to consider that you're in a sustainability business, because no matter what you're building, it is the era, this decade, that you are going to be perhaps running into product and material limitations and
water and everything.
It's like the first time I'm hearing this. I feel like I wish music could play. Maybe we could insert a little, music, but I don't know what kind of music. It's celebratory from the awareness, but kind of macabre music from the intent. Like we got to this state. Help me make sure this is a positive conversation.
It is, because it's practical optimism.
Yeah.
You want to be optimist, but you're practical. What we've done until now is we were like, we can do whatever we want because we have all the resources in the world. We can keep pushing consumption. We can keep pushing a lot of things. And now we're realizing, we're going to have big water problem, big material problem. Well, and yet people are consuming more and more at a rate that is exponentially increasing. Look at the amount of data that we're consuming years after years. Mm-hmm. So now you really have to be smart, right? You're like, okay, then we probably have to recycle more, right? Create circular model around materials so we can use this material. We're going to have to look at resources that we haven't used before. We're going to have to be smart about how to push this solution. And I think it's fascinating because until then, really, let's face it, we were really interested in pushing something, scale it, make money. The sustainability part of it, we kind of didn't really think about it. Now we can still be successful, we can still make money, but you're going to have to be smarter about the choice that you make. Think about water, for example. Water has been so cheap until now. It's never been accounted in any type of financial. Material was cheap, water was cheap. So we can build whatever we want. But this is not going to be the case. So if the cost of your solution is going to the roof because the material price is going to the roof, because the water is going to the roof, because a lot of your supply chain elements are going to the roof, you're not going to be able to be in business. So that's additional dimension. And I still see, as of today, because I'm contacting a lot of startups, it's interesting. I see two families of entrepreneurs. The one that are really smart, that get it. And they start kind of defining a solution that take all this input. And the other one that still act like 10 years ago, we can do whatever we want. And those, they may be able to have a short, some quick profit, but it's not going to be sustainable. And from an investor standpoint, that's not going to be interesting.
Wow. About a decade ago, interesting you brought up the word decade, Paul Gilding had written the book, The Earth is Full. And I'm almost imagining you writing a book about the limits of scale or something. I almost feel that this is beyond a TED Talk. This is a book. And it sounds like you have so many experiences with companies that could, populate the chapters on this.
For sure. It's like when you work with startup, it's a very humbling experience because you find great people, great technology. But let's face it, most of these startups are not going to make it because it's hard these days, right? It's a very hard ecosystem. But I think the one that are going to make it, they're the one that understand where we are in terms of consumption, resource. There's a strong imbalance today. And maybe for a couple of more years, you can still do whatever you want. But the reality with climate change and all the different natural disaster, the number of natural disasters is increasing, you're going to have to be much smarter about the choice of technology, about how you do it, looking at sustainability in like a long run. But this decade is going to be really, for me, fascinating, because you're going to have the old thinking of still wanting to do business the same way and pushing innovation that are not going to last. And you're going to have this new type of founders, entrepreneurs that understand the ecosystem we're in. They want to trigger real change, not only make money, but trigger change at the society and environmental point and create a different type of business model.
So you heard it here first, that the startups that will make it are the ones with the most accurate view of reality.
For sure.
Yes. All right. Well, so on your website, We Grow Green Technology, there's a whole tab called seeding. And I've not seen that before as a tab. And so I'm interested in that as a theme, and also why it was so significant to have it as a landing page on your website.
When I started with Grow Green Tech, so I came from digital technology, like electronics. So I first worked with startups that were more into the digital technology space, IoT, like to try to kind of like make system more efficient, like you using hardware and software. Then I started going more into natural science, biomimicry. And I think to me, like a startup is like a plant, right? It's really interesting. You have a seed. So when you're a gardener, I don't know if you garden, but you can plant like 100 seeds. There may be 10 that are going to sprout, right? So you already have a natural selection, which I think is kind of interesting if you look at the startup ecosystem. And then you have this really small period of time when you're really going to have to take care of these sprouts. You're going to have to put water. You're going to have resource every day. Like you really because that's the key phase of this plant. It has to have strong roots, it has to grow. And once it's at a special phase, then it can become this amazing plant. And I like the analogy with startup, because a startup, the truth is, you have your concept and you have one window to make it. You're going to have to work a lot. You're going to have to bring resources. You're going to have to bring experts. You're going to have to bring money. And then if you don't make it within this window, you die. Which is really close to a natural process. And that's kind of why in this website, I put the concept of seedling, because to me, it was a beautiful analogy.
It's a beautiful analogy and very visual and really scalable as a model for sure. Can you just give us some insight on just a couple of things that will help strengthen those roots?
Resilience. I found, at least for myself and most founders that I work with, building a startup it's a very humbling experience, because you keep failing, you keep being rejected. I like to remind founders that I work with that Edison, when he built the electric bulb, it took him 1,000 iterations. Well, finally, he was able to generate a successful electric bulb. And so a lot of founders come with the best intention in the world, and it's hard, and it's getting harder. And the people that are really make it are not necessarily the brightest, but the most resilient one, because they keep going. And it's the first path that I admire in a lot of successful founders is resilience. You don't really see that because it's always about big success story. Oh, look, I've done that. But at the cost of a lot of hard work, a lot of sometimes rejection, because when you're too early, people don't want to take a risk. Corporation don't want to they're all interested, but at the end of the day, they don't want to take a risk. So very often I advise founders, you get discouraged, but then the next day we're all back in the saddle. We say, no, this is what I want to do. And I tend to think that sometimes when the most successful founders are the ones that have passion, because the one that just here for the money, after a few rejections, it's too hard. They're just going to go do something else. But the one that have passion, they really believe into what they do, they're the one that make it. And that's the highest point to me. It's like you can be bright, but you don't have resilience. You don't have like tough skin. Then you just, at some point, it's not going to work.
Where did your resilience come from? Because it's almost like in order to see it, you have to have it, So where did yours come from?
Passion. I think my passion comes from So I was born in France. I was raised in this very little town in France by the Pyrenees. My parents are very connected to nature, still are. And so very early on, I had this very strong connection to our planet. And, like a little like native Indians, and when we feel very connected and grateful, we're part of our environment. And when I did the switch, right, I was a pretty successful career working for a large technology corporation. But I felt I was not doing something to make a change, because we have entered an era where we're in trouble. We went too far. We're going to have to find a solution. And so this passion is like every day, right? You're kind of seeing how far we pushed it, what we need to do. And so that's where my passion comes from. Like the desire to really help driving technologies that could make a change.
So it sounds like purpose is almost superseding money in the future of VC space. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but I think, I'm optimistic. If you heard about the VC space, yes, money has always been, that's the way capitalism has been grown. But to me, it seems that we have reached a point where we haven't put any boundaries. There's an interesting book called The Donut Economics. And we push capitalism so far that we didn't include either environmental or social parameters. So there is this new financial model that people are trying to develop called impact investing. And that's the new way to look at still growth. You want growth, right? You want financial growth, but you also want to include additional elements, such as the cost that it has on the planet and on the people. And I think there is a lot of VC firms starting to look into impact investing, starting to look into investing for a better future. I think we all converging into that direction.
Thank you so much. And in case our listeners are not familiar with donut economics, I recommend that you follow or read about Kate Raworth. She has done a lot of work on a healthy economy should be designed to thrive, not grow. And so that's a really, really great reference. For people to learn more about impact investing, I have a lot of resources, but I'd like to hear from you. What is the best place for people to go to learn more about impact investing?
So it's hard because I don't have really a financial background. But when from an entrepreneur standpoint, I think where you can start is looking at impact metrics. Because I think more and more people on the financial side are trying to kind of understand, how can I qualify my investment as being potentially impact investing? But the reality is, as of today, there's really no standard that exists that people could follow. But if you can somewhere articulate, if your technology has a potential impact, a really positive impact for the planet, impact metrics, then there's a way for you to kind of like connect with this sustainable aspect of financing that could be interesting for investors. It's not what you don't want to drive. You still want to drive with the profit that you will make, but that's an additional, that could be something that can help you close deal when you're working with investors.
Wow. So we grow green tech with Hélène, Thibieroz, and the three most important things. I think she shared so much, and I can't wait for all of you to hear this and to really almost study. You've given us so much to think about, but the idea of reverse engineering your supply chain from the beginning, that the startups that will make it are the ones that actually have the greatest sense of reality, and that designing for both profit and impact are really important in this next decade. Very excited to have you as a guest. Thank you for being here.
It was my pleasure. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
So glad you joined us today. I'd also like to thank Monroe County, Startup Grind Rochester, Upstate Venture Connect, Upstate Capital of New York, NextCore, RIT, and the University of Rochester for your partnership with Marl Startup Studio and collaboration to this entrepreneurship tipping point that we have in Rochester. Finally, I'd also like to thank our producer, Scott Fitzgerald at Rockvox Studio. If you have an idea or want to know more about our program, connect with me at jennifer@marlaccelerator.com. Please subscribe to our program, and we will continue to provide you information and inspiration about taking your idea from a concept to a business.